Alright, the Bucks. It is Talking Buccaneers with me, Fumane, after obviously Orlando Pirates lost against Marumo Gallants. I'm coming to record this video a full 24 hours after, that defeat. And I want to start there and apologize for some people who perhaps thought that they were going to get a video. And I want to say, kind of going forward, that especially with the midweek fixtures, it's going to be very tricky for me to either do a preview or a review, because I'm someone who is fully employed. So for me to kind of find time does get a bit tricky, especially immediately after the game. It's quite tricky. Even watching it sometimes is like touch and go, maybe traveling and that sort of thing, and then re-watching it and then making sure I can give like a quality product myself in terms of my thoughts around the game and that sort of thing. So for those people that were waiting on the video, I do want to apologize. This is the video that you were waiting for, but it's going to be more of like not instantaneous and more like after a couple of hours having thought about what I think about the game. And yeah, this is it. And then in this video I want to kind of get into like, I think more of like my disappointment in with certain things with regards like the club, and then the head coach. Obviously I'm going to touch on that as well, my thoughts around him. But I want to start off with kind of like, the goals that we conceded and that sort of thing. And yeah, so I mean, I have had like a few conversations with fellow Buccaneers around the game and that sort of thing, and there are all sort of varying opinions that I have had. But the one that I think I keep going back to think about and to question is when people have been speaking about, that Orlando Pirates dominated the game, and it is kind of like beg the question, specifically for me, like what people actually mean by these terms. Like, what do you actually mean dominated? Is it like we dominated possession, harmless possession? Is it like in the way of like chances created and that sort of thing? Because so my view of in the entirety of the game, I feel like we didn't really dominate that game. Especially people say, hey, we could have won that game because we had three big chances. We had three big chances. They had two, and they took their two. We took only one of our three. And then we also had, penalties that were not given in our favor, which is problematic. I can be entirely honest with that, so I'm not disqualifying that sort of thing. But I think in retrospect, when I do think about is that the case though? Can we really say, hey, we should have won the game because we didn't take three big chances and they took two? And my apologies for looking back. I thought someone was trying to get in and maybe needing my help. I'm recording from work, so anyway, so I think, in view of like that statement of we dominated and that sort of thing, I think I disagree with it. I think we didn't dominate against Marumo Gallants. I think if Pirates goes to Gallants and they get only three big chances and Gallants gets two, I think that's the sort of game that I do expect that we will lose. Because I think what Marumo Gallants is drilled in, especially in coming up against an opposition like Orlando Pirates, is they are playing for two big chances. And you can best believe they probably will take. And for Orlando Pirates, I think it's the sort of game that we're thinking we need to create loads and loads. And that's the sort of team that I think in preseason we will have been thinking about, to say when we go and we play against Gallants, we need to be creating a lot so that we can win that game, because they're going to sit back. And so we're drilling ourselves in how to create chances. And if we're only going to create three, it's going to be problematic. I think just going forward and in view of yesterday, I think it's going to be problematic for us to celebrate 3 big chances and then going on to say that's a game we will have won or we could have won. And so, yeah, I'm sitting here to say I don't see how we dominated Marumo Gallants at all. I think we didn't dominate them at all. Some people are saying, yeah, we did in the first half. It's just the second half. I think in the entirety of the game, we can't be proud of the quality of chances that we created. I don't think so at all. I think obviously one of them, which Tito took, I can congratulate us because we took that chance. But for the rest, I feel like, well, we needed more, you know. And yeah, and then in the way of Marumo Gallants, I've already touched on. I do expect that, you know, those 1-2 crosses that they will kind of put into the box, they're drilling themselves to take them. That's what they're playing for. They're playing for those 2 chances. And if they take them, we're going to lose if we create only 3 chances. You know, and just kind of getting into like how obviously they scored against us is, and I'm going to get to like my sort of disappointments with the coach and the selection and that sort of thing, and kind of what I think everything means kind of going forward. But you know, the first one is, and it's gonna kind of talk to the bigger conversation for me with Mashilwane and sort of Siema. There's a bigger conversation, so I don't want you to hear me necessarily criticize particular players, even though I will, to drive a greater point, which I will get to much later in the show. But I mean, for the first goal, obviously, it is a cross, and I think it kind of talks to what we've been struggling with. Some people have been saying it's set pieces, but I think I am thinking that it is specifically crosses to the back pole of the back post of Orlando Pirates, and I think teams have now studied that if you hang it in the air towards the back pole of Orlando Pirates, you're going to catch them not concentrated. Someone's going to lose focus somewhere, you know. And I think it was the case. In 2 of the goals, what happened is the ball was floated. Now, there's a conversation to be had about stopping the crosses, which is one thing. I mean, I'll get to that, especially with the second goal. But the first goal, ball is floated into the box, back post. I think Mashilwane loses focus. Nduli could have covered the first player who because it's hanged in the air, and forgive me, I don't specifically remember the name. I didn't think that I was going to get to like trying to remember who headed it back and kind of thing, but the ball is hung in the air. It goes towards the back post. It goes towards the man that, you know, Mashilwane should be defending, but he has left his man and he's trying to cover a space which Nduli should be covering and would cover, but Mashilwane vacates the most dangerous man in the box. And I think it's just terrible defending. If you guys have an opportunity to watch it back, just watch the movement of Mashilwane where he leaves the man he should be marking and he tries to mark someone who would have been stopped by Nduli. But it causes a bit of confusion, but the ball is headed kind of back into a dangerous spot, and then easy finish for Marumo Gallants for them to equalize with the first goal. But the second goal, almost in similar fashion, but I think that one specifically, I see Hoto could have stopped the initial cross. I think also kind of a rookie mistake by Hoto, because where he should let the man he's marking kind of onto his weaker foot, which was down the line, which is less dangerous to let him go down the line, but he allows him to kind of get inside and cross with his stronger foot. So have an in-swinging cross towards the back post again. And again, Mashilwane and Siema, 6s and 7s, utterly disappointing. Siema, first of all, doesn't time when to jump. He loses his marker. It's just ball watching. And then, you know, it causes like this confusion again in the back post where Mashilwane again loses his marker. And there's been all this talk by the head coach about, hey, we're prioritizing height and all this thing, and hence Mashilwane is playing. And I haven't seen how it has yielded, kind of, especially in those 2 goals. When I watch them back, I go, yeah, he is tall, but first of all, he's got to be able to mark, you know, his man in the box. And in 2 occasions, I think the questions that he's asked in terms of his marking, his concentration, his decision making as to where to be, who to prioritize in terms of marking, then he gets both wrong, and they both lead to goals, you know. And I think it was very disappointing. I think defending is something that Orlando Pirates should really be prioritizing, because obviously those are the moments that I think when Orlando Pirates sits and they plan and they think, where our opposition going to try and hurt us. It's the exact scenarios in which Marumo Gallants scored, but it's the exact scenarios in which Sekhukhune scored, and you can go back and it's like the same things. And I think they are average at best in terms of answering the questions when it comes to attacking low blocks, but then they're utterly poor in defending them. And the combination of those two things is not going to yield results. It means we're going to concede, but we're also not going to score. And I don't know about you, but that kind of equals to defeats, you know. And that's how you lose games. If you're not concentrated in defending, but you're also not sharp in attacking, that's how you lose these games. But I think there's a bigger conversation. And the bigger conversation is, for those of you that kind of follow like Talking Buccaneers outside of YouTube, but even on YouTube, I posted a carousel in which I was kind of speaking about a dilemma that Coach Abdeslam Wadu was facing coming into the game against Marumo Gallants, which is that, you know, there's a lot of talk with the fans, and the fans are kind of crying about the fact that they feel like he's completely ripping apart the foundation that has been set, and he's kind of like playing with an altogether new team. And so it's obviously affecting the continuity of the success that has been at the club, or the relative success. And so how do you expect to win with that kind of thing? And yeah, so there's obviously that talk that's happening, and leading into the game after losing your first game against Sekhukhune United, which, by the way, I must say, when you lose the first game in the league, that's the kind of position that you put yourself in. And I think there's no legislating for that, because some people are saying, hey, you can lose a game in the league, which I agree you can. But I think Abdeslam Wadu, for what he's paid and the expectations that are set on him, that's the job that he's given, is to make sure we don't lose. I know we can lose games, but there are absolutely games that we can't lose. There is such a thing as you can't lose the first game in your new tenure. In a new tenure as a coach where you are starting off at your club. Like, I don't understand, like fans are absolutely losing their minds when people are questioning the coach for losing a first game. They go, hey, stop. And it's like, no, there is no stop. That's the kind of job at hand for him. It is to win the first game at all costs. And he lost it. And losing the first game against Sekhukhune at home, highly anticipated opening game at Orlando Stadium, and you lose it. It sets up a scenario in which people are going to question you. And so it sets up a scenario in which you absolutely have to win against Marumo Gallants. And obviously for people, the questions were, it's because of the fact that he has ripped everything apart that has worked at the club. He's playing with his players. He's changed the core that we know. I have thoughts on that and I can get into them, but that's not specifically what I get into. But I think obviously there are some questions that I have about, hey, but some of the players that are not playing are some of the players that people were complaining about, like Talent Mbata, for example. I hear people calling for Mbata to play in midfield, people calling for Mabasa to play as a striker, and this and that player. And yet, those are the players that, you know, last season when everyone was kind of complaining is that Mbata doesn't know how to play in midfield. Tshegofatso Mabasa is not good when it comes to kind of his hold-up play and everything else apart from his goal scoring. And so they're calling for them to not play. And those are the players that really, when you go back to Jose Rivero's team, are the ones that are not playing, with the exception of Dino van Rooyen. And yet people are saying this is a new look team. And in the case of Makehleni Makhala, there's no chance he can play because he's injured. So it does like sort of beg the question, who are people really calling for? However, that's not the conversation. The conversation is this. He faces a dilemma, Abdeslam Wadu, which is he bends to appease the fans because fans are calling for certain players. He either bends, which obviously puts him at a risk of people thinking he does what. Any slight criticism of his methods, he bends and he does what people are asking for. Which I don't know if it's the smartest thing to do if you're the head coach of Orlando Pirates, to listen to everyone and do that. I don't think it does you good in your relationship with the management, your employers, where it's like you are just doing the favorite thing by the fans. But the dilemma is either he does that or he sticks to his conviction and continues with like what he thinks will work at Pirates. And then if he loses, it just further intensifies like it is right now. This is a position we're in where he's continued with sort of this, what I can call like experimental thing with players and playing this player or that player. Players that weren't, typically in the starting 11 for Orlando Pirates last season. He's continuing sort of in that vein. And he has lost a second game in succession in 3 days. And the 3 days it matters, because if it would have been after 2 weeks, I think this thing would have been a bit less. But it's like we just lost Saturday, now we've lost on Tuesday as well. Like just quick turnaround, 2 defeats. We're already like 14th on the log, with other teams having games in hand, which if they win, we very well could be sitting on 16th after 2 games. Which I saw something, I think someone put up a stat, I think might have been like some like kickoff or something. They were saying the last time that happened was in 2007 for Orlando Pirates. It is a rare thing at Pirates to lose the first 2 games. Jose Rivero didn't lose the first 2 games. Abdeslam Wadu has. And so he's in a unique situation. And there are fans who are upset at how other fans feel about such a situation. And I think it's weird. It's weird that they think it's okay to be losing the first 2 games. I think I'm not saying that I'm calling for the chopping block and for Abdeslam Wadu to lose his job. I'm absolutely not. In fact, I'm not the kind of person who is like that. In fact, I'm the opposite. I feel like I'm perhaps too sentimental for some fans. However, I really think that it's unfair to want to dictate how Orlando Pirates fans feel, given their expectations. And I think it is fair to like ask serious questions about if you can't be pragmatic enough to win the first 2 in a new tenure which you described as needing absolute success or nothing. If you can't win those games, then you, coach, sat in front of us and you spoke about how the expectations are high because you're taking over a project which is now at the very end and it is now needing of results. And you are not getting those results in the very start of that tenure, of that period. And it's like we're going to play second fiddle again. Questions are going to be asked. That's what I'm saying. And I feel like Buccaneers are just like being unfair when questions are being asked. 'Cause I see the debates, I see the conversations. It's like, stop it, guys. You're discouraging the coach and that sort of thing. But I think it is fair for questions to be asked. And I think Abdeslam Wadu knows himself and Orlando Pirates knows that these are the questions they're going to get. And it is unfair for them to try to shut us up. Them being the fans or whoever is trying to shut everyone up. It's not called for. People are allowed to ask questions. We can't play second fiddle at the start of the campaign, especially even leading up to the MTN8 semi-final, which is coming up at Orlando Stadium. I think, which I've got thoughts and I'm kind of going to get into a little bit of that. But I think maybe I'll leave that for tomorrow's video. But I think the point that I do want to make is this. I think, it's quite questionable to me, and I can see that Abdeslam Wadu has played for Fulham. He has coached AS Vita everywhere. He's gone around. I think he might have been at Monaco as well. I might be mistaken about that. But I know he has coached in France, especially in the youth levels. And he's also coached in Morocco, youth levels, I think even at senior level as part of the technical team, maybe assistant coach or assistant manager, whatever the term is. And that is to say, he knows way better football than I do. But something that was particularly questionable for me was, well, a few things. The first one is this: there's been talk of especially considering the players that played against Marumo Gallants. I think out of Jose's typical team, I think it looked 7 of the players that played were either new or weren't playing under Jose Rivero. So it was an entirely new look Orlando Pirates with 7 or so players, with the exception of Maswanganyi, who we know was a regular, Sipho Shane, who we know was a regular, Dion Hotto, who we know was also a regular. I think the other player who probably was some kind of regular for Jose Rivero was Mbekeze Limbokazi, who also is relatively new at Orlando Pirates and is the new captain. Yes, but he's still relatively new, right? And the rest on the pitch, Bitumelo Rayopane, Ozona Polis, Tsapang Moremi, Mashilwane, Siema, Nduli himself, who else? Mariko, all these guys, all these 7 players are still finding their Pirates career, including Bitumelo Rayopane. They're still kind of finding their footing at the club as like, they've been here, they know this club, they know the expectations, you know. And for me, I think in a game where it's like absolutely needs must after losing against Sekhukhune, to go to Marumo Gallants, and the coach talks about it was for fitness reasons and things like that. I'm thinking this is the second game of the league. I'm not like someone who has worked in like the medical side of football, but I've watched how other teams have done things, elite teams. I've seen how at the start of the season, there's like a consistency of lineup, even though they're midweek games. I've watched Liverpool, I've watched Manchester City, Barcelona, all these big clubs play a Super Cup final in between 2 league games and play extra time and still keep the same players. But I think it's because the start of the season, the fitness levels, the fatigue has not yet kicked in. What are you rotating? You know, and it says to me, which is disappointing, which he said, Abisamadu himself in his conference, he says he was looking at some games that we are gonna play, and I'm going, you were looking at other games and not the game in front of you, and you have now lost it. That is disappointing, you know, to say the least. It's like, coach, you made the decision to sacrifice certain players, and you went with what you even called changement, and we wanted to try out new players. And I'm going, I don't think Abisamwadu recognized what was happening after losing against Sekhukhune. Like, I think he needed a rude awakening, because maybe he's going to get it, like, which I don't call for, don't get me wrong. But if he didn't, he's going to get it now, because he didn't realize what losing against Sekhukhune meant, given the expectations at Pirates. He thought he could still tinker and try out things, where I think he was in a situation after losing against Sekhukhune where he had to win and he didn't recognize that. And now he has lost, and now it has made the situation grave. It's utterly like I feel like the relationship with some of the fans, not all of them, but with some of them, has broken down. Absolutely. I can say that. I'm not even trying to instigate anything. You go read Twitter, go read Instagram, go read everywhere. You will see it even. You will hear it. Go to the stadium, you will hear it. Let Pirates concede a first goal in any game, and you will know what Pirates fans actually think of Abisamwadu. And I think for him, like, that's what he's paid the top dollar for. He's paid the top dollar to recognize these things. That when you lose against Sekhukhune in the first game, you are in this situation. You can't afford to lose against Marumo Gallants. You can't afford to rotate. And then you have to make medical decisions as well. Is it worth resting players in the start of the season where they are still gaining fitness? And his answer was yes, and he has lost. And now the situation is what it is now. And I'm saying, I don't know. But the other thing, again, is what I'm saying is, you know, in that moment where Pirates are now 2-1 down, and the captain's arm belt is worn by Mbogazi, there's no Sibisi and other players. Is there going to be leadership to get us out of that situation? That's the other call he had to make. And he didn't make those calls. We lost, and whatever he went with is what he believed in. He thought we were going to win, to be fair to him, but we didn't. And the situation is what it is. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video from Talking Buccaneers. If you did, please hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with all our future content.